Good evening, everyone. I hope you had a pleasant Pesach. I've spoken to many of you through Chavrutot throughout this past week and trying to get back into the swing of things after this somewhat elongated holiday. Thank you for sending in your these little short papers. I've begun to read them with great interest, and I hope to get them back to you as soon as I can. This coming week, I'd hoped to be able to do it tonight, but it's already a little bit getting late. I won't be able to. I want to be able to post next week's assignment as well. But next week I will give you some information about the term paper that will be required for the end. No point in talking about it now. But you should get whatever information you need. I've spoken a little bit about this within some of the Chavruta groups, but it should be pretty understandable and pretty clear. And if not, we can certainly talk about it. The readings for this week were quite interesting. Some of you have commented on the fact that they seemed a little easier to get a hold of than some of the readings that we'd had earlier, and I sort of commented that they really deal with issues that are still pretty live issues today: reward and punishment, free will, God's relationship to the world, how does he intervene, what is justice, all of these things. And Maimonides does deal with these. My comments will be fairly brief tonight, so let me go right into them. First, talking a little bit about the discussion with regard to Moses. I saw that some of you were not exactly convinced by my interpretation that chapter 36 is really related to the figure of Moses. That's okay. I myself am not always convinced of this view, but it does seem to me to make sense, as I have discussed in my posts on that topic. As you know, I've been reading this stuff for a long time, and I change my mind all the time. This one seems to me to make some sense, but it's certainly not the only way to think about these chapters. It is interesting also to think about Rambam's discussion of providence in relationship to his discussion of Moses. Moses being maybe the person with the highest providence, highest degree of providence, maybe, but also having a high degree of imagination because of his political role. As you saw, that sometimes his providence left him when he got aggravated with the people. I think, one question would be, could there be a philosopher who could achieve a higher level than Moses, since he wouldn't have to deal with recalcitrant people that would move him out of that kind of channel of connection to God? Although Rambam talks about Moses always being in connection with God. It's just kind of an interesting thing to think about. Your discussion of providence in general, I thought, was quite good. I think you all saw the move Rambam makes when distinguishing his own view from not exactly that of the Torah, but people who interpret the Torah, early commentators, later commentators, and so on. As we will see in this coming week, the question of reward and punishment is a vital one for Moses' role as a lawgiver. The relationship between providence and intellect is the key to these chapters. And the more we know, the more we can be cognizant of the fact that God's governance is not like human governance, and the whole thing is really a mystery. So as we try to exercise and go from potential to actual with our intellect, the idea of knowing God better is, as somebody said, maybe knowing what God isn't maybe better, or understanding the mystery of it. It's very difficult. But drawing a relation between one's behavior and what happens to this person, a direct relationship between behavior and what happens, is a view held by the masses, but the elite know better. And when they come to a deeper understanding of the universe and what they can know about God, they appreciate that mystery. That's really what the chapter on Job is all about. He went from a sort of a very simple understanding: he's a good man, good things are going for him, and so on. Then he finds that he's a good man and bad things are happening to him. So what's going on there? And the answer is not a direct answer. The answer is that it's a mystery. And as we come to understand things, we understand that God is not necessarily responsible for all this. I hope to next week, if I have the time, to to scan for you some material from Spinoza, which deals much more directly with this question of man thinking, the human being thinking that he's the center of the universe and everything that happens has to work for him personally or her. That is, rewarding or punishing. If something bad happens in a building he's in, he wonders, why does it have to happen to me? Well, it happened to the building, or it was nature, or whatever it might be. And the other thing that I would say is this also leads us to understanding about the nature of the claim of the book of Job itself. I've always had some questions trying to understand what the voice from the whirlwind is telling Job. What do we really learn about reward and punishment, good and evil, and so on? I've come to the conclusion that perhaps the main point that we can get from the book of Job, and I admit that's not said directly there, but the main point is all the friends come to Job and say, you sinned, you should repent, and everything will be okay. Job says, I didn't sin, so there's no point in repenting. It would be inauthentic, and so on. He says a lot of other things too. So he doesn't repent. My view here is that what this book is ultimately telling us is that if you suffer, it does not mean that you did something wrong. We always have in our mind, let's try to figure out what we did wrong. We'll correct it because God is punishing us somehow for having done something wrong. It seems to me the book of Job is really saying something quite different. Rambam, in some of his other works, takes a different perspective in the Mishnah Torah on Ta'anit. He really wants us to think that when things bad happen to us, it means that we haven't been observing Torah. So it's a way to get us to observe Torah. But in terms of the true way of thinking about things, it seems to me that the book of Job really moves us in the opposite direction. And that's really very useful as we think about pain and suffering and so on, and not necessarily looking at ourselves and blaming ourselves for the bad things that happen to us. So that'll be it, I think, for this evening. It's always never quite as short as I think it's going to be. Have a good week, and I'll hope to be posting the next week's assignment maybe later tonight or sometime tomorrow. Bye-bye.